I am officially obsessed with Japan. Yeah. My siblings and I went there recently for my brother's birthday, and ever since we've been back, I just cannot stop talking about it. So I want to talk about it some more. We went there recently for my brother's birthday and had an amazing time. We did a lot of research before going there, so overall the trip went very smooth. However, there's still a couple things that I was like, I wish I knew this before we got here. You know, it would have helped out knowing these pieces of information. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. I want to talk about 7 or 8 things that I wish I knew before going to Japan to just make the trip a little more seamless, or, you know, just helpful things to know before going there. So yeah, let's get into it. Number 1. Your phone actually needs to be paid off before you can use an eSIM. I did not know this, right? Me and my sister did like all the research for this, right? Throughout all our research, we knew we needed an eSIM. We watched a bunch of videos on eSIMs. We knew the companies or the apps. So, you know, we were ready to use an eSIM. We get there and we're all in the process of activating our eSIMs, and I'm the only one having trouble. And, you know, the instructions say to go to your settings and check to see that your SIM card is not locked. Mine was locked. So it turns out if your phone is not paid off, you can't use an eSIM. Now, I recently upgraded my phone, right? So I still have a plan on it. My siblings, they've had their phones for a while, so theirs were already paid off. So luckily they were able to use their eSIMs. And it wasn't a huge issue because they had their eSIMs and we were always together. However, if you're traveling solo, this is definitely something that you should know. Worst case scenario, I could have just used my data. And I did a few times when we got separated. But if you're planning to use an eSIM, just make sure you double check that either your phone is already paid off. Even if it is paid off, just make sure that your SIM card is not locked, or just alternatives to that. I'll say this along with making sure your SIM card is unlocked so that you can have data. If you don't have data, it's very important to know that there's not Wi-Fi everywhere. In most of my travels, it's usually easy to come across Wi-Fi. Most restaurants that you go to will have it, most stores. For my traveling experience, if you're in a building, you'll probably have Wi-Fi. That was not the case there. A lot of places did have, I wouldn't say a lot, I would say about half the places we went to did have Wi-Fi, but enough didn't that it was definitely noticeable that, like, you know, you definitely do need the data. So yeah, that's thing number 1. Your SIM card needs to be unlocked before you can use an eSIM. And if your phone is not paid off, it's probably locked. Okay, thing number 2. This one I kind of knew, but it really didn't hit me until we were actually there. Japan is a very homogenous society. Yeah, if you get what I'm saying. Like, it's not very diverse at all, right? And, you know, coming from someone who grew up in a very Caucasian area, I'm used to being one of very few Black people in the room or in an environment. However, in Japan, I don't know, it was just different. First of all, the only time we came across other Black people were if we were like on an excursion or something. And even then it was like very few and far between. We spent most of our time amongst locals. Like our first 2 hotels were very just local hotels, so weren't very many tourists. Our last hotel though was a much more touristy hotel, and even then it wasn't I don't think we saw there, we might have seen a few Black people there, but it was at least more diverse. I think there were some Australians, some just tourists, right? But it was very obvious that the majority of the population is Japanese or Asian, right? This wasn't an issue at all. It's just something that I'm mentioning because although I knew, it still was just one of those things that you're like, that's really interesting. You know, where I live now, it's more diverse. I mean, the area that I live now is predominantly Black, but you'll still find other races, you know. And just in general, when I vacation to other places, usually there are more touristy areas, so you see a lot more Black people, a lot more other races. But yeah, no, this was one trip where we definitely felt like a minority for sure. And along with that, there was never any obvious discrimination, but there were a lot of situations where it was very obvious that they were not used to seeing Black people. You know, like we would walk into the train or something, and you could just tell that, you know, they're kind of doing a quick second glance, you know, like there was, again, no discrimination. We never felt targeted. Oh, well, there were a few instances of us walking into a store and we were definitely followed a bit more closely, or we would walk in and one of the employees will literally be like right behind us the whole time, right? But aside from that, there were never any, you know, signs of discrimination. People just really like minded their business. Everyone kept to themselves. But yeah, no, it was definitely interesting. There was this one instance when we were on the train and a few seats became available. So my sister and I sat down, and I left the seat to the left of me open for my brother to sit down. But to the left of that was like an older lady. And my brother was, quite obviously just a bit hesitant about sitting down because he didn't want to make her uncomfortable. She was an older lady, an older Japanese lady. He's a black man, but she was immediately like, she pulled her things closer and she like patted the seat, like, come have a seat. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. So no, there was really, we didn't have any negative experiences, but it was just an interesting thing to note that, yeah, Japan is a very homogenous society for sure, at least in the areas that we were in, which was, we spent time in Tokyo, Osaka, and then a day in Kyoto. Okay, the third thing I wish I knew before we actually got there was just general things about Japanese like culture, society, things like that. They are a very organized society from our experience, right? They are very organized, very quiet, and very reserved and very like modest, if that makes sense. For example, we never heard a car honk once while we were there. There were multiple times, if we were walking a bit slowly, like while we're trying to figure things out, or if we were just kind of in the way for something, people would they'll just wait until you're done, and then either they'll just walk around you or just patiently wait until you're done. Where I'm at, if you stop the line, you're going too slow, you will hear about it. They will shove past you, but that's just what we're used to, right? Over there, they don't do any of that. The trains, everyone is very respectful. They make announcements about not talking on the phone while you're on the train. If you're having a conversation with the person next to you, keeping your voice low. People never really had conversations with the people next to them. Everyone just kept to themselves, were on their phones, or just chilling, waiting for their stop. Another thing too was the fact that in terms of organized, everyone patiently waited in line, right? There were a few times where we inadvertently kind of cut the line because we didn't know there was a line until eventually we realized and then moved to where we're supposed to be. And even in those situations, nobody actually said anything. We just only knew because, we were kind of getting glances and people were kind of looking over. So that's when we're like, did we do something wrong? And then eventually we realized, whereas we're used to when you do something wrong, if you're, out of line, whatever, you'll hear about it. Somebody's going to say something to you, most likely rudely, right? So that was just very interesting. So we had to be very mindful to pay attention that like we're not cutting the line, we're not talking too loudly. Mind you, I consider myself a very chill, not a super loud person at baseline. Over there, I would definitely be considered a bit obnoxious, right? So they're very mild-mannered, especially in public areas. So that was something I wish that I knew. I mean, you'll realize it quick once you get there. You'll realize it because even if you start eating on the train, you'll notice that like nobody's eating on the train and like everyone is kind of giving you sideways glances. If you're talking too loudly, people are going to be looking at you sideways. Even if nobody says anything, you'll just know you're doing something wrong, right? So that was very interesting. The other thing too I'll mention along with just a cultural thing that we noticed was that everyone was very just respectful of other people's, everyone was very considerate, right? Like as far as not eating, no one wants to hear you chewing in case you make a mess, not drinking, not talking, and especially not talking on the phone, right? And along with all of that, they are very, very punctual. Now, this might sound like it's not a big deal, especially if you're already a very punctual person. That's not me. And in my culture, in African culture, in Black people culture, punctuality is not our strong suit, right? So it was very obvious that the Japanese people or the people in Japan are very strict about their time, very punctual. Being late, even like a few minutes late, is seen as a huge sign of disrespect. There were a few examples of this, especially on one excursion that we went to. We were a few minutes late getting back. Our tour guide was panicking, right? Rightfully so. We're very much used to, if you're a few minutes late, it's not really like a huge deal. Over there, it is a huge deal. Yes, it is a huge deal. So that was very interesting. Also, in terms of being organized, everyone very much follows the rules as far as what side of the hall you should be walking on if you're going towards or away. On the escalator, everyone is very mindful to stay to the I want to say right if you're, just standing and just taking the escalator up, so you can leave the left open for the people that are walking up. Just very consistent. Like everywhere you go, it was very consistently like very organized, right? Another thing too is the fact that there are barely any public trash cans. Like you really wouldn't find, it's hard to come across a trash can just being outside. And with that, you would think that the place would be just a bit littered, a bit dirty. Absolutely not. People definitely carried their trash. They carried it until they could dispose of it. The country was very clean. Yeah, no, just the people are just, they are lovely. They are lovely people. Okay, so I think we're on number 3. The third thing that I wish I knew before we got there was that it was gonna be cold, right? So we had checked the weather before we went. I think it was supposed to be like in the 60s-ish, like high 50s, 60s. When we got there, the degrees was still the same. It was still about what we were expecting, but it just felt so much colder. Like most of the stuff that I packed was for like spring-ish weather, but no, it was cold, it was rainy. We had one particular just like nice, or actually no, 2 like really, really nice days. But for the most part, it was windy, it was raining, it was cold. I definitely didn't pack enough, like just warm things overall. So if you're going specifically to Tokyo, Osaka, or Kyoto, like end of February, early March, just overestimate how cold it's gonna be and just pack warmer. And like even honestly, it's better to just be warmer than colder, to just be like bundled up, because you could always just take off the layers. But yeah, if you're going around that time frame, look at the temperature that it's supposed to be and just add like 10 or subtract 10 degrees from it, because 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Because yeah, it was much colder than I was expecting it to be, for sure. The 5th thing that I wish I had known, or at least taken more seriously before I'd gotten there, was that Google Maps is definitely better than Apple Maps as far as navigation. Initially, when we had reached and we were finding our first hotel, I had initially used Apple Maps just because that's just what I had on my phone. At this point, we hadn't downloaded our eSIMs yet. We were still trying to figure it out. But I used Apple Maps because that's what I had on my phone, and it definitely almost took us right past our hotel and kept telling us to go further down until we just realized that like we literally just passed the hotel. And from there on, we just used Google Maps and had no issues. So I did see it mentioned in some videos, but I was like, how different could it be? How much of a difference would it actually make? But no, moving forward, the rest of the trip to use Apple Maps. So that's why I'm adding that on the list. Like definitely just use Google Maps, save yourself the headache. It's very, very easy. It gives you all the, the train stops, what platform you're supposed to be on. Like it just made navigation so much easier. So yeah, Google Maps, not Apple Maps. Okay, so thing number 6, I think. I've completely lost track. But this one thing I left it further down the list because it's more personal. What I wish I had known before getting there was that I was gonna have an allergic reaction, I think. Once on our, I think, 2nd day there, I noticed that I started getting like some bumps on my arm, but I didn't think it was a big deal. I've definitely had experiences when I've traveled to other places where I would get like a bit of a rash somewhere that usually went away, but it wasn't that serious. But as the trip progressed, it pretty much turned into like a systemic thing, right? Like I didn't have any other symptoms. It wasn't itchy, no fever, no cough, no nothing. Like I wasn't sick, but I was definitely allergic to something. I'm not sure if it was the food, the water, hell, even the air, who knows? But I definitely broke out in a rash by the time I was coming home, like my whole torso, my chest, my arms. As a matter of fact, it's still, trying to resolve itself. Okay. Sorry you had to see that, but it's almost gone. Well, at least it's flat now. It's not raised. It's more so just like dark spots now. And according to ChatGPT, it's just post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, I think is what he said. So hopefully it'll completely fade, but I don't know. But yeah, no, that's definitely something I wasn't expecting. I've never had a reaction like that to anything. And the worst part is I have no idea what it's from, right? Like I don't know if it's like the water or something that I ate. But yeah, no, I wish I had known that. I mean, if I had known before that was gonna happen, maybe I would have like taken some Benadryl or some Zyrtec or something. Well, actually, no, I probably wouldn't have taken anything. I'm very stubborn in the sense that I don't like to take medication, but it just would have been good to know, right? So I could have been prepared. But I'm just waiting it out. Even now, I'm not taking anything. I'm just, waiting for giving it time to pass. According to the internet and ChatGPT, it should completely clear up between if it's still there and 6 to 8 weeks from now, then I should be concerned, but it's already going away. But yeah, if you have sensitive skin, which I typically don't have sensitive skin, just be prepared for, you know, if you have a reaction to something. Maybe it was even the sheets. Who knows? Who knows? Okay, and then last but not least, the hopefully seventh thing, if I'm on track here, that I wish I had known before traveling to Japan is that home will never be the same. No, unfortunately. So home will always be home, but it will just not be the same. I feel like as soon as I got back and, you know, I'm going back, reintegrating back into my society here, there are so many things that I'm looking at and I'm like, "Ah, Japan would never do me like this." You know, as far as like the cleanliness over there, everything was just so clean. Now, mind you, this is just coming from a tourist's lens, right? If you're a local there, you might see things differently. If you've traveled there a whole lot, you might see things differently. But from a tourist, first time traveler's lens, everything is very, I'm wearing rose-colored glasses essentially, but yeah, no, everything was, you know, clean. The public transportation was clean. Everyone is so like not particularly nice. I don't think how do I put this? The people weren't overtly like friendly. Like I said, everyone just kind of kept to themselves. No one is smiling at you as you're walking down the street, unless you're in Disneyland or Disney Sea. But no one is rude, you know, no one is overtly like rude to you. No one is gonna cuss you out. No one is gonna, you know, shove you as you're trying to rush to get somewhere. We never had that experience and we never saw it happen, right? And mind you, we were in the city, we were in Tokyo. So the fact that we didn't hear a single car honk, that's just insane. But yeah, so the last thing I wish I knew is that like coming back home, you'll just see all the things that you're lacking, or you'll just see all the things that, you know, your country is lacking as far as the food quality, the societal standards, the cleanliness, even along with cleanliness, they give you a wet wipe with like every meal, even at a fast food place. Even when we went to McDonald's, you got a wet wipe in your pack. Even at the McDonald's, there was a sink like in the restaurant, like outside in the restaurant, that you could just go wash your hands in before you had your meal. So it was very obvious that cleanliness is a top priority, right? The facilities and everything were clean. Of course, we all know about the standards for the Japanese bathrooms. Most of them, there were a few of them that was kind of like, this is a little worse than I was expecting, but most of them were like really, really clean. Like it's just when you come back home to your home country, depending on where you are, you're just gonna miss it. At least I miss it. You know, I miss it very much. I miss it very much because, you know, I've gotten a taste of how the other side lives. I've gotten a taste of, you know, what it's like to be in that type of society. And it's nice. I won't even lie to you. It's nice. One more thing that I'll mention before I hop off. The jet lag. The jet lag is absolutely no joke, okay? The last time I traveled somewhere that was significant enough to cause a jet lag was like almost 10 years ago, right? And that was to Europe. But for this trip, I want to say it took at least like 3 or 4 nights for us to be able to like really sleep throughout the night. And even then it was like, it wasn't a full sleep. There would be some interruptions. That very first night that we got there, we woke up at like 2 a.m., right? And then we were essentially up until we went down for breakfast at like 6:30, 7 when they opened, and then stayed up again, came home, napped, all that stuff. The next night, I think I woke up again at like 2:30, 3, and then proceeded to be up for the rest of the day. So I never really felt like fully rested. I didn't feel like, you know, tired, that I couldn't go on with the day, but the jet lag was definitely no joke. Like, I was, you know, every night I'm like, you know, I should be able to just sleep through the night tonight. I feel pretty worn out from the day since we were like out and about, whatnot. But no, I would go to sleep for a few hours, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and then end up being up until essentially the morning, and then sleeping in a bit later. If you're in the process of planning your trip, make sure you allot enough days to account for the jet lag. Like, our trip was 10 days, and when I do go back to Japan in the future, I would probably do at least 2 weeks just to really account for getting my sleep schedule back on track. Because although, you know, it still worked out, you know, we were still able to function well, I feel like it definitely just would have been more enjoyable or more productive if we all got enough sleep, you know what I mean? So yeah, definitely account for the jet lag if you don't know already. If you don't already know, I'm telling you now. Anyways, those are hopefully 7 things that I wish I knew before traveling to Japan for the first time. Again, the trip was very smooth. We had a great time. We did enough research for us to actually pull it off smoothly, but these are just a few things that are inconsequential, but they still would have been a bit helpful to know beforehand. If you took anything away from this, please let me know in the comments. If you've ever been to Japan and you have any tips of things that, you know, would be helpful for first-time travelers, things that you wish you had known before you went there for the first time, or even just tips and tricks that could just make your trip a bit smoother as a repeated traveler there. Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a like. Make sure you subscribe. Again, I'm obsessed with Japan, so there's gonna be a lot more Japan content. Stay tuned for the vlog, and yeah, check out the shorts. I have day-by-day shorts of our 10 days there, so be sure to check that out. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. Bye.